you're constantly saying no to things and then they work out and you're regretting that you weren't involved, you probably should start saying yes to more things. On the flip side, if you're like me, where you said yes to too many things and now you realize that, two out of the 10 deals you did actually lost all of your money on, your track record isn't good. Perhaps it's time to say no more often.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, excited to have Mike McCarthy. Mike, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining us. A little bit about Mike. Mike is a husband, father, and serial entrepreneur. For the past 2 decades, he's played a major role in the growth and expansion of Keller Williams to become the #1 real estate company in the world. And as the regional operating partner for the greater Pennsylvania region, he's led a team of over 9,000 real estate agents in over 50 locations. And they closed over $23 billion in real estate in 2024. Is that a typo? Man, that's a ton of closings.
It's not a typo.
Jeez, that is amazing. We're going to have to dive into that. Mike's also one of the co-founders of GoBundance Mastermind. We'll dive into what that is and how people can look that up. And also as well as a founder of Fambundance, which is a program focusing on growth development for entrepreneurial families. He's also got a couple books out there. Tribe of Millionaires, co-author of that, and also co-author of Miracle Morning for Parents and Families, and the accompanying family playbook. So, Mike, man, a lot of stuff going on. Anything I missed there that you want to make sure listeners know?
No, that sounds like a pretty good start. So
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Well, let's dive in first to the real estate side of your business. And so you run a huge region in Pennsylvania, a lot of real estate agents that you're overseeing. Let's take it back though to kind of how you got your start in the industry, and then we'll move forward.
yeah, so I graduated college, and around the age of 21, 22, I got my real estate license. My dad had been a broker for Keller Williams in the Colorado area, and he had launched several of their first offices that did well outside of the state of Texas. And so I was able to join him. I thought I was just going to learn how to sell houses, but I immediately realized that what he was really focused on was selling franchises and not houses. And so he had just acquired the greater Pennsylvania region for Keller Williams. And so I had an opportunity to learn either sell houses or sell franchises. And at the time, the CEO, Mark Willis, said, "We're about to go through a huge boom. Keller Williams is a franchise that's about to have a massive wave of growth. And if you focus on selling houses right now, you're going to miss the opportunity to be in on selling all these franchises and supporting the regional growth." So I made a decision to learn how to launch a real estate company, how to put a core group of agents together, and how to go in and infiltrate in any given market. And that's what we began to do. So the first like six or seven offices my dad and I did together. Him on his own for the first few, and then I joined him and we did like 8 or 9 offices together. And then after that, he was really, I don't know if he was just wanting to retire early or if he was wanting to give me a sandbox to go learn leadership lessons and kind of grow on my own without him sort of being the driving force. Whatever his reasoning was behind it, it was a great opportunity for me because at the age of 23 or 24, was the regional director over 10 offices, 10 to 12 offices. And we had about 1,000 or two agents. And then, I was able to grow it from a couple thousand agents and 10 offices to over 50. And now we've got almost 10,000 agents. So it's been a wild ride, but it's a testament to being part of a system that's ripe for scaling, which Keller Williams was and is at the time, has a very distinctive model. And then being a younger person in the business, like at 22, you're pretty wet behind the ears. And
Yeah.
I would go into a meeting and meet, 40, 50, 60-year-old, seasoned agents and be telling them like, hey, I have the next, greatest thing in real estate. You should pay attention. And I think they would be equally as shocked at how young I was as equal and then also shocked by the opportunity that I would paint out for them because it was so much better than typically what they already had been offered. So I think my age sort of helped at the time. It was like a new company doing new things with a different type of model. And I was a young guy that was pretty smooth talking, I guess you could say, and was able to convince a lot of people that Keller Williams was going to be the next force for real estate growth. And yeah, now we're the number one real estate company, and by market share, volume, and units for the region that we're in, we sell about 18% of all homes or in
Oh,
those
wow.
areas are sold by Keller Williams. So significant market share, and our region is the second highest producing and highest market share out of all 30 regions in Keller Williams in North America. So it's been a wild ride, and obviously like it's starts off with a little bit of nepotism and then a power struggle, and then my dad semi-retiring, and then me taking it on from there and just making a lot of mistakes, but getting enough of it right to where it all worked out.
Mike, how long would you say your dad was, you and your dad were partnering on these deals before he kind of
Well, we
semi-retired?
were, yeah, I mean, I was just an employee to start, so I had zero ownership.
Okay.
I worked for him for 2 years before he sort of set me loose on my own. I still had very little ownership, if any. Maybe it was like a couple percentage points that he was using his gift tax exemption to give me some equity each year. So I would get about $20,000 worth of equity each year. So I was, at a snail's pace, like, and in the next 100 years, I would have owned the company.
Yeah.
But once I started being more successful, we sped it up. But we worked really closely together for 2 years. Then I sort of worked more independently, but we were still business partners. And we launched a few other businesses that didn't do as well as the real estate company. He launched a restaurant and brewery, and I was
Hmm.
a major investor, but he sort of took that by the reins in his retirement. And it was a tough business, but
It's a tough
he
business.
did the best he could. And we had our beer being distributed all throughout Florida. It was
Oh,
in
wow.
Disneyland. It was in Disneyland, and we were making $0, actually negative
Hmm.
dollars off of it all. So tough business, but
It's
we
just
got to
super
work
tight
closely.
margins, or what's the problem with that business?
Well, it's a couple of things. One is in Florida, when you sign on with a distributor, it's a lifetime contract. It's unbreakable. So
Hmm.
once you pick your distributor, if they decide to not promote or push your beer, you're screwed
Hmm.
because they have the rights to be the only people to sell it in an area. So my dad would go door knock bars basically and convince the owner that they should carry our beer. And then they would call and order our beer, and they'd say they were out of it, the distributor, and they would push Bud or some other,
Hmm.
some other beer that they made more money off of instead. And so it was like this constant like disappointment of the distributors not fulfilling the orders that we worked hard to get. And then when we had such a large amount of beer that we were brewing that we couldn't do it in our own brewery, we had to contract brew, and then the margins were so slim that there was basically no room for error. And then the biggest mistake we made, quite honestly, if all of that would have been manageable had there not been a restaurant attached to the brewery.
Hmm.
And that's where we really got crushed, is having to cover the food costs and the wait staff, all, and then deal with that type of labor. It just wore my dad out, and the restaurant was not in a great location. You know, you really need to have a great location and a great concept for a restaurant to work. You can't have one or the other.
Yeah, especially
So
today.
yeah,
Um, was
so
is that company still around, or did it just you said done?
no, it closed. My dad
Yeah,
sold it twice. We reclaimed it twice,
yeah.
sold it the third time, and that company actually went out of business.
Hmm.
And even though they had a personal guarantee, they declared bankruptcy. And then they said they sent me a letter to get in line to collect my money, but they never even sent the letter. So they basically just cut off all chances of us getting any kind of recovery. But we got all but about 100 grand out, but we still lost like 2 million on the whole thing over the 3 to 5 years it was open.
Yeah,
So
that's a painful lesson, but um, I'm sure
uh,
there's some good lessons learned. Like, what would you call maybe the number one, maybe number two? What are the two biggest, most valuable lessons you could take out of that experience?
well, one is he had the wrong partners. So the people that originally had the name of the brewery and a smaller one operating in a nearby town, we thought they were going to be really great partners because we were delivering like their dream brewery and their dream restaurant, and they were going to be significant owners in that, which would have been a way bigger opportunity than the little corner bar, you know, one barrel brewery that they had.
Yep.
But there was, right up until even the last moment before my dad signed the deal with them, I was saying they're not the right partners. There's no way. Like, they had brought up too many weird questions and thrown up too many roadblocks towards the end. And my dad is like a deal closer. And so sometimes he gets his eyes and his heart set on closing the deal versus being like, is this actually the right deal? And so
Mm.
I think choosing the right partners would have made a huge difference, especially from my dad's ability to enjoy it, because he had to do the job of our partners and the job he signed up for. They were basically like coming in like 20 hours a week and then wondering why we were upset with the level of partnership. And then in the end we found out they were stealing beer from our big brewery and selling it at no cost to them out of their other location. Um, and so they were stealing from us, not working hard, not putting in the time. And the warning signs were all there on the front end. If we had looked at how they were showing up to the negotiations and the initial partnership, I was like, this is wrong. But my dad was just like, let's close it and make this happen, and sort of didn't follow through on maybe doing a gut check or a slowdown and decide if this is right or not.
Yeah, I feel like our gut check is super important. And you can do your due diligence, that's great, but then that gut check, just that feeling, like you said, that they're asking some weird questions, they didn't have the right answers, that just those things. There's, hey, I'm not sure if this is the right fit. That's the best time to just be done. And I had the perfect example of a partnership that I almost got into, and I'm really glad that I listened to just that instinct, because found out later this guy was a crook. A lot of things happened, and I would have been associated with that just because of being his partner, even though it was on a different deal than this. It was, you know. So yeah, listen to your gut, man.
Yeah, check in with your gut. And even if it feels like you can't say no
Mm.
because there's other factors, you should really check in and be like, what pressure am I feeling? And is it the right kind of pressure? Is it,
How,
to do the deal or not do the deal?
yeah. So how do you navigate the difference between that and just the fear of doing a deal? A lot of people get afraid to do something, and so they let that hold them back, and they never end up doing anything. I'm sure you've met plenty of people that have all kinds of hopes and dreams in their life, and you're like, well, you've never done anything. You've never taken a risk. Of course you're where you're at. How do you like navigate the difference there?
I guess you got to know your own track record. If you're constantly saying no to things and then they work out and you're regretting that you weren't involved, you probably should start saying yes to more things. On the flip side, if you're like me, where you said yes to too many things and now you realize that, two out of the 10 deals you did actually lost all of your money on, and there were warning signs there and you shouldn't have done it. But if you're saying yes all the time and your track record isn't good, perhaps it's time to say no more often. So I think it just depends on which side of the equation you fall on. Are you more of a yes person or a no person? Both sides can stand to probably inch closer to the other side and say yes a little bit more, or say no a little bit more.
Oh, that was a great answer, Mike. Spot on. You got to know who you are, understand your track record. Are you constantly saying no? If you're constantly saying no and regretting those decisions, then you know you got to start saying yes. And of course, as you said, the exact opposite. So, um, Mike, let's talk back to the real estate. I want to, man, I mean, scaling the way you did is really impressive. And I think most people listening would love to, whatever they're doing, would love to be able to do something similar in their own particular business. How, like, what kind of advice can you give those listeners that just want to look, you take it from nothing, you got these 10 offices, now you got these 50 offices, you got 10,000 agents or nearly 10,000 agents. How, like, what are a couple key critical things that you did that you look back and say, that's why I was successful?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing is that I really believed in and believe still to this day in the Keller Williams model. And I believe that it would change somebody's life. If I was sitting across from you and I could convince you to start or be a part of an initial launch of a Keller Williams franchise, I was like 99.9% sure that I was changing your life and your family's life for the better.
Hmm.
So I think there's a level of conviction that we need to have in whatever we're selling. And no matter what business we're in sales more than likely. Even if it's not in the title or you have a sales team, like you need to know that you believe deeply in the product that you're offering. And I think that was huge, is I really believe that we were capable of changing anyone's life who had joined forces with us. So I'd say that would be number one, is conviction in what you're selling and really believing that it can do more than just make you money, but change somebody's life or change the world. That's really key for me.
That is
The
key right
second,
there, though, right? Is the last thing you just said about it. Like, if it's just because it can make you money, you believe that it can make you money, it's probably not going to be that successful. But if you believe that it can make other people money, that it's the right um, product, it's the right service, it's what people really need. That's a totally different way of selling. You're not really selling. You're giving people information because you're so passionate about that information. You're not selling people. Right? You're just saying, look, man, this is fantastic. Like, you have to do this. This is just a no-brainer here.
yeah. Yeah. And then the next thing I would say that I did well is I surrounded myself with the right people. One employee I inherited from my dad, actually, she's still with us today. She's the CFO of the McCarthy Family Ventures. She's also the operations manager for the real estate company. But I used to call her when she was my dad's secretary when I was 10 years old and tell her where I was riding my bike. And then whenever I arrived there, I'd have to call her and say I arrived. And
Hmm.
so fast forward like to, 30 years later, 37 years later, I guess it would be, I'm 47. So, she's basically my right hand, um, for all of the details, all of the
Hmm.
contracts, all of the estate planning, all of my bookkeeping. She does it all. So I lucked out in getting an incredible employee right out of the gate. So when it was just her and I, and we were building the region, I had a solid partner that could do all the things I couldn't. And so we made a great team of complementary skills and strengths. And then as we grew and we had opportunity and revenue enough to hire others, then I began the process of whatever job I was doing, I was trying to replace myself from doing it any longer. And I got it incredibly wrong the first time I tried to do it. The guy that I hired for 2 years was bad mouthing me, made me out to be the villain that was trying to push for growth because I just wanted to make money. And he kind of also made international corporate look like they were the bad guys. So he was their savior, and we were the bad people that wanted to put pressure on them to make more money and grow their businesses. Which part of that's true. We wanted them to be more successful, but the way he positioned it, it just made it seem like we didn't care about people, and he was
Yeah.
the one who cared about them. And it eventually, once I fired him, it took about a year of him going and making a bunch of side deals with our franchisees and screwing them all over that they finally realized that he was actually the problem and not me. But they had to go have their own journey with him for a while. And then
Yeah.
they realized, like, oh, actually, Mike does care about us. He does care about, the leadership of this region. In fact, I care about it deeply. And then I went on a hunt and found better people to fill those spaces. And one of the people that I hired early on is named Michelle McBride, and she went from an administrative assistant in a single office to now she's the regional director for the entire greater Pennsylvania region. And she's just a killer. She's an animal. She's hungry, she's smart, she's talented. She's got a doctorate in organizational development. She works her ass off, and she worked very hard at each level to get to that next place. So hiring her was a huge win. And then, I eventually hired a guy named John Clyde to be the previous regional director. Now he's the co-regional operating partner with me.
Mhm.
But
Awesome.
he's a guy who was a New Jersey state trooper working full time as a selling 100 houses a year, owning a Keller Williams franchise, and being a full time state trooper. And he left being a state trooper to be the regional director for us, like 2 years shy of his pension. And he's just an animal too. He's super strong. He's talented. Everyone likes him. He gets results. So, I was able to surround myself with people like Paula, Michelle, and John, and get out of their way at that point.
Yeah.
And then you have to be ready to eat the humble pie, because whenever you do a good job of stepping out of your position and letting someone better than you fill it, you'll have this ego blast where people are like, oh, it's so much better now that you're not in that position. Like Michelle's kicking ass, or John's so good. But you have to be willing to realize that that's actually the greatest compliment that you could get,
I
is
mean,
if
that's why
you
you hired them, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
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 So hiring the right people, conviction in sales. And then, I think the biggest thing is I never stopped working on myself. And I think the business grows to the extent that you're willing to grow personally. And so I continued to find coaches, mentors, programs, trainings, and I was a lifelong student of leadership and business. And I think that within that, realizing that I also needed to work really hard on myself, like healing parts of myself, um, focusing on what makes me tick and why, and really dissecting who I am and who I want to show up as. And that sort of introspective focus, I think, is key for people leading businesses, is to really get to know who you are and lead yourself well.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't lead others if you can't lead yourself.
Yeah.
Um, let's switch over to GoBundance and Fambundance. I want to know a bit about those, and I think our listeners would benefit hearing about both of those as well. So, GoBundance, what is it all about? Why'd you guys found it?
Yeah, so GoBundance just started as me and three of my good friends. They were actually mentors to me at the time, because David Osborne was the first mentor my father introduced me to when I joined Keller Williams, and said, "Hey, this guy's done what you're trying to do right now, and he's only a little bit older than you. You should, learn from him." And I for the first time ever, met somebody who shaped the way I saw a successful, rich person. And I was like, wow, he's fun. He's not stuffy or cocky. He's just he's got a good spirit about him. And I really took to him being my mentor and learning as much as I could from David. And then he was hanging out with these guys, Pat Hyben and Tim Rode. And we would go on these adventure vacations where we do something physical, and then we would share around goals and learn and teach and hold each other accountable. And it slowly just went from like four guys, and then we were like kind of sick of each other's stories, so we started inviting more people, and it culminated in us having 18 guys come to Steamboat to David's house. Heisman Trophy winner Ricky Williams was like there with us. He was our big draw for the group. Everyone felt like pretty cool that they got to hang out with Ricky, but more importantly, it was the first time we called it GoBundance, and it was a GoBundance event. I believe that was in the winter of 2013. And then we went on an international trip together with about 10 of those guys later that year. And then the following year, we did a annual winter event again, only in Tahoe this time, and 45 guys showed up. And while they were there, people kept asking, like, what is this? What is GoBundance? How do we do more of this? And we realized at that event, like, we should create a membership to this club. And without really knowing what we were doing, we began selling memberships to a thing we didn't plan to create. It just sort of created itself. And we've not really had this big vision to turn it into anything. We've just wanted to continue to create the type of mastermind that we would all still want to be a part of, and has adventure, has camaraderie, has accountability. But the biggest thing that I think we deliver and package in GoBundance is a level of vulnerability and authenticity that you don't see a lot with highly successful people. And I think that's one of our strategic advantages, is that we don't believe that just because you've crushed it in financial business areas of your life, that means that you're done and you just get to sit on your mountaintop. We believe you have a duty to make sure you're in the best shape of your life, your relationships are super authentic and healthy, that you're giving back in your community, and that you're having fun. Like, a lot of people forget that you should be having fun along the way. And sometimes we let go of our health, our relationships, our community, and giving back on our way to creating business success. So we're not really a business mastermind. We're more like a life mastermind. And it's really for guys and gals. We have a women's division now too, that have achieved a certain level of success, and they've realized that their conversations are not as expansive as they used to be, and they're more isolated as the leaders of their business, leaders in their community. There's a lone wolf type of scenario that emerges, where we try to be a pack of lone wolves, a tribe of lone wolves that work together so that it's not so lonely and isolating to be successful in this world. Because I think it's less, the chances of your high school friends or your family understanding what problems you're dealing with when you're closing multi-million-dollar deals, it's just a conversation that you can't have anywhere else.
Yeah,
So we've
sure.
created a space to have that conversation be natural and normal, as opposed to, oh, we don't talk about money or whatever. We made it more common for that to be the place.
Yeah, and that's for sure. And anybody who's an entrepreneur, I mean, it's especially, it doesn't, I guess, I don't think it matters how many employees you have. Maybe it does, but when you don't have a ton of employees and partners and stuff like that, you're completely a lone wolf. And it's right. It's you hear it before. It's like it's lonely at the top. You just don't have a lot of people to bounce ideas off of that have been through what you're going through. And especially during tough times, a lot of people have gone through tough times lately. Um, the GoBundance probably would have been a fantastic thing to have in 2008, right, during the great financial crisis. It would have been
Yeah.
and you guys, quite frankly, formed it. You said 2013. I mean, that was kind of getting out of that GFC era. But yeah, just having people to really relate to talk to be vulnerable with, and to talk more, certainly about business, but about how business is affecting the rest of your life too. Super valuable. How about
Yep.
Fambundance? What is Fambundance about?
Yeah, so Fambundance is the community that I lead that's delivers programs and events for the members of the families of our members. So we have 2 to 3 trips a year. We're doing 3 this year. Um, One of them is a give back trip to Nepal, where we'll be supporting a charity that helps fund 9 orphanages. And
Cool.
so it's an adventure slash give back vacation. But our standard events are a winter and a summer event. And those are designed to bring the family together and have them work on things with trained facilitators that they wouldn't be able to maybe work on so easily at home. So we help them create shared values that are clearly defined. We help them create visions and goals for the future as a family. And then we help them identify the rhythms that help them be the best they can be as a family, whether that's daily, weekly, monthly, or annually. What are the ways that they come together, celebrate, handle conflict, connect, bond, and spend time together as a family? And so we also then work on how does that build your real legacy, not your financial legacy, but the legacy you're truly leaving behind, which is, how well have we prepared our children for the future? So we do breakouts during these events. So about half the time they're working with their family on something. And then the other half, they're broken out into teens, kids, and parents into separate breakouts. And then we focus on things that help the kids learn and grow and connect together. Same with the teens. And then the parents, creating a community of parents who are all concerned about raising great children and our legacy. And we do some masterminding. We bring speakers in. We're also doing this year, we're launching in July a virtual program. We'll do 6 a year. The first one, it's called Legacy Learners, and the first series is on money and wealth building. And then the next series that we're doing will be on personal development and self leadership. And so these are just like 6 session, 8 week programs where the kids or teens get on a call, and we have a facilitator that's teaching a lesson plan, and then they get back on the following week and they kind of go over their homework and whatnot. So that's something we're just about to roll out, is the virtual programming. But ultimately we're just helping entrepreneurs focus more on their family. We find that it's very easy for entrepreneurs to focus on business. They're good at it. They get a lot of significance. They get the dopamine hits when they look at their KPIs. They get a sense of pride when they're leading their team and they're the one in charge. But when they go home, there's no KPIs. You're not the actual leader of the team. You might think you are, but you aren't. And you have to have a different approach for leading at home. And it has to be more organic, and it has to be more of asking everybody what their opinion is and what they think and what they want. And it's in showing up in that way that you really bring your leadership skills home, and they get to learn from the leader how to actually build and run a team the right way. And it's slightly different than maybe how they do it at work. Hopefully not, though. I would argue that the best way to lead a team is the same formula to lead a family,
Hmm.
which is to enable as many voices as possible to create the future together and define what's important in the present moment,
Yeah.
rather than one leader saying, this is what I believe and I have all the answers. A great leader should just have all of the questions, not the answers, and really bring that to the family. But we find that most entrepreneurs either avoid leading at home and they focus on how they're too busy at work and they're leaving the family to go build a business and they're doing it for the family. And therefore they're making the family the excuse for why they're not spending time with their family. And if you probably ask their family if they would rather a couple $1 million more in net worth for that year, or more quality time with the leader who's making that happen, they would probably take the time over the money.
Yeah.
And so breaking that trend of making it all about how I'm working long hours for my family, but I'm absent from them, to me doesn't make any sense. So I'm trying to challenge guys in GoBundance to show up more for their families and to treat it with the same intentionality that they would any of their businesses or their work teams, because this is your best number one team, is your home team, and you're building all this wealth for them. But if they don't get to interact with you and see how you lead, then it's going to destroy them instead of help them
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah.
Or you can give them nothing and make them figure it all out on their own. I'm not opposed to that, but they still don't have the relationship with you that they should. And you're void of bringing your leadership into the house. Most entrepreneurs, including myself, are guilty of this. So this isn't to judge anybody and say one way is right and one way is wrong. It's to say, be real with yourself about why you're spending the time you are working on your business. Don't say it's for the family when you actually love that shit and
Right.
you get significance and an ego blast from doing it. Just be real and be like, I love to work, and I probably love it so much that just like if I was playing too much golf and I couldn't be like, well, I'm golfing, I'm a mediocre golfer and I'm going to become just above average because I'm doing it for the family. It's like, no, you're not. You're doing it because you love golf.
Doing it because you
But
love it.
but with but with business, it's like this idea of, well, it's work. But
Right.
really, if they're still doing it and they're avoiding family time to do it, they love it. So don't
Yeah.
make the excuse that it's for the family. Just be real and be like, I have a problem. I love to work, and I'm going to limit it to this many hours a week, because going beyond, in my mind, 40 or 50 hours a week working is not only ineffective, but it's just not practical. And in my mind, you're missing out on your whole life, the whole other part of your life. You're just working, working, working. Like, what's the point? You're gonna die soon. My dad told me when I was very young, nobody gets out alive, son. You've got one life to live. Make sure you make the most of it. And that's such a true statement. So why, if you're not gonna, you know, partition off the amount of time you're working and get real about why it is you're working that much, then you'll probably not show up the way you could in other areas of your life, whether it's family or your community or your extended family, or even just giving back in some way.
Yeah. That was that's some fantastic advice. If you're struggling, which I think most of us do with your family life, like maybe creating the memories you want, doing the things you want, spending the time with your family that you want, just re-listen to that. That was awesome, Mike. I mean, I really appreciate it. How have you seen Fambundance play a role in your family and the success that you've seen?
Yeah, well, I mean, exposing them to GoBundance has been a blessing, and having them be in Fambundance has really been beneficial to them. Just from number one is, I've done such a great job of freeing myself up from my real estate business that by the time they were old enough to realize what was going on, like, I really wasn't working in that business anymore. So they didn't really get to see or
You
even
build something.
experience, like, what does dad even do?
Yeah.
So when they're a part of Fambundance, they at least get a glimpse into what I do and where I'm focusing my energy. So it sets a good example in that way. But the biggest impact it's honestly had is the relationships that my kids have made with other GoBundance members' kids,
Hmm.
and knowing that their school friends may come and go, but these are the friends that will be in their lives probably forever. The families that I'm really tight with through Fambundance, we've seen our kids all grow up together, and we'll continue to vacation together and do Fambundance events together. So seeing the relationships that are started and realizing like one of the powers of GoBundance is getting in there and making all these amazing relationships. Well, imagine if you got started at 10 years old doing that and
Yeah.
you were building a network across the United States that you could then leverage later on in life. So it'll be fun to watch the partnerships and the friendships and the who knows,
Yeah.
maybe even marriages that come from Fambundance families all doing life together.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be fun to see. Probably some good partnerships that could be formed out of that group, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, man, I really appreciate the time. I got a couple last questions, switch gears here. So what's a favorite book you can recommend to our listeners?
It's hard to pick one. Can I give two?
You can give two.
Um,
That's okay.
okay. So I really am a big believer in Dr. Kelly Flanagan's work. He wrote a book called Lovable. He also has a book called True Companions, and he has a novel that he released too. I think the Unhiding of Elijah Campbell. But the book Lovable is amazing. It talks about ego and how natural it is to create it, and how it can be our worst enemy or our greatest asset, and how to work through that. I coach with Dr. Kelly, my wife and I do. He's been huge for us. So I recommend his work at a really high level. And then the other book, which is pretty obscure, not a lot of people have heard about, it's called The Tools. And it's by Stutz. It's actually Jonah Hill's therapist is a guy named Phil Stutz, and he wrote this book with another therapist, and it's all of these very practical, non-dogmatic or religious, non-airy fairy, like visual models of how to see yourself in the world, how to break through fears, how to get the cloud of negativity to go away that sometimes follows us around. And I also recommend that book because if you wanted to, you could also watch the Netflix special that outlines most of the book or quite a few of the tools that are within the book. It's called Stutz and it's on Netflix. It's a really good documentary that walks through the tools and also how Jonah Hill has used them in his life. And it's so, either the documentary leads to the book or the book back to the documentary. But I've had a lot of success using the tools from that work. And I find it to be some of the less triggering stuff because either sometimes it's either too deep and too spiritual or it's too practical and too mental. And this is sort of like what walks the line between the two worlds really
Yeah.
well.
Cool. Cool. Love it. All right, last question. Three pillars of wealth creation. What are they? You've probably said a couple of them already, but what are your three pillars?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is really like being generous and being a servant leader, like being of service to others. And really that falls back into sort of having an abundant mindset. Like something that I've always done well is just be generous.
Yeah.
And so there's not this like, I need to hold on to everything and come from this scarcity mentality, whether it's natural or maybe partially learned because I see the benefit from it. I've just never had generosity or giving back fail me. It's just, it seems to come back with some type of ROI, which I never expect. And even if it doesn't, there's some type of um, benefit that comes to you spiritually or in your soul for really showing up that way. And so
Absolutely.
honoring that abundance and generosity, I think, is my first pillar. Um, the second pillar I would focus on for wealth is specifically financial wealth is quit all of your side hustles, pick one business and crush it. I think there's too many people who think like I'm going to invest in all these different deals and they're going to make me money and I'll be able to retire on the passive income. And that's actually not true unless you first have a big source of income
Yeah.
that's coming from most likely from either one job that you crush and you have great bonuses and flexibility and time, or pick one business and go crush that. And instead of trying to 2x that business, 10x it, take it from making 200 grand a year to 2 million a year. And then instead of having your eyes set on the exit, which everyone always is like, I want to build this business and then have an exit. The opposite is true for me. And from my perspective is you generally will make more money by getting it all set up. Let's say you went from 250 to 2 million a year in profit. And if you hired the right people along the way, you should no longer have to work in that business, and it should continue making 2 million a year. So why sell something that's turning off $2 million a year? Because it's hard as shit to create something that makes 2 million a year. So, and then people try to sell their business and go replace that income through making investments. And then they go make a bunch of shitty investments and they lose a little, they win a little, and it never pans out the way it does. So I always like to have people focus on one lane, one area, one business, and crush it. And don't get distracted by doing a bunch of different investments and starting this side hustle and that side hustle. Like, pick a lane, stay in it, and crush that one lane.
Love that. Love that. Okay. So generosity, focus on one business and crush it. One more.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing would be to understand that wealth is actually more than just financial wealth. Mm-hmm. And so it would really be about understanding what are the other types of wealth that are important to you. Is it relational capital? Is it intellectual capital? Is it social capital? Like, what are the other types of capital other than financial capital that you would want to accumulate in order to feel wealthy? So thinking about what those are, and then realizing too, if we were to give this third thing a title, it would be legacy. That your legacy is going to be far more about all of the types of capital that you could leave, not just financial. And we typically think about our legacy as the financial capital that we're leaving, but it's actually more important that we leave great values and good ways of hard work and showing up fully to what we're doing and developing who we are personally and growing and supporting each other in community. It's like, those are the things that really will become your legacy. So yeah, focus on your financial capital. But if we're really talking about wealth, make sure you have a multi-dimensional definition for wealth, because having a lot of time, having a lot of friends, having a lot of information and knowledge, those are all forms of capital that you can transfer through your legacy, either to the world or to your kids if you have them, or to, whatever the next generation is that's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that one. Mike, really appreciate you joining us on the show. Tons of value here. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah. So if they're interested in GoBundance, it's just GoBundance.com. Fambundance.com is where we post a lot of our stuff for families. And then if anyone's inclined and wants to follow me on social media, my Instagram account is Go Mike McCarthy, and I'd love to have you follow me there.
Awesome. We'll put that all in the show notes. Mike, again, really appreciate you. Appreciate the time. You have a fantastic rest of the day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to
work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.